I believe deeply, deeply, deeply that every child, no matter who they are, deserves to be treated as if they are amazing. So I am currently a principal in a school just south of Oakland, California, which is in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're a small network of schools. We have 3 schools, and we work really hard to make sure that all of our students can go to college. And we work really hard to make sure that we're serving students in areas and in communities that have a big gap in the achievement of young people and where there's very few people going to college. But before I talk about my school, I want to talk a little bit about myself, because the fact that I'm here right now is pretty unlikely. It's unlikely because my parents and where they come from, which is a small, tiny island in the middle Atlantic called San Miguel, they had to live through a lot of difficult things. My dad often, for a big chunk of his life, only wore shoes on Sundays to go to church. Some weeks where they didn't have food, my dad would use a ferret they had in the home with his brother, and they'd go into the field and they would put the ferret in one hole of a rabbit hole, and his brother would go to the other end of the hole with a bag and catch rabbits. And so they would go around the community seeing if they could trade rabbit for other types of food. So needless to say, my father and my mom had to go through incredible sacrifice so that their children could have a better life. And when they got to the States, they actually didn't have enough cash to buy their first lunch, and so they had to borrow some money from my tío, my uncle, to eat. And so my parents' ambition and their sacrifice is something that's really at the seed of all of my leadership and the seed of my belief in the young people that I serve, is that everyone, no matter where they come from, no matter what their story is, no matter how difficult of a situation they've had to go through, that greatness can come from small places. I believe that deeply, and that really drives my work. I'm going to presume that my presentation is not going to happen, yeah? Yeah? Someone's trying? Awesome. Missing out on all these really cute pictures of my children. The next picture was going to be a picture of my son, Jose Antonio, Joseph Anthony, who's named after my father. My father died 2 years ago, and my son was born 10 days after him. And the reason why I share the story of my father and my son is because I believe that we, just like they shared, that we lead and we teach who we are and from where we are. And so my father and what he taught me, the ability to work hard and to dream big and believe that you can do anything, drives me, but also my willingness and my desire to be a fabulous father, and a father that leads with integrity, that lives my life in every second, that if anyone took a picture of me or recorded what I did with my life, that my son would be proud of how I act. And I would honor the sacrifices that my parents made. And so I live that way. In everything I do, I try to live with integrity. And I teach that to our children. I teach that or I model that to our teachers at our school in everything we do. So when my parents hoped that we would all go to college. I have 2 other brothers. I have a brother and a sister, Roger, and my sister's name is Gisela. They really wanted us all to go to college. That was why they went to the States. That's why they went to the United States, was so that we can go to college. And unfortunately, my brother and sister barely graduated. And I was the first one in my family to go to college. And I remember what it felt like when I got my letter to UC Berkeley, and how my parents just started crying, and how real it was for them to see finally all of their sacrifice realized in their son's ability to make a dream come true, which is that their son would have an easier life. My parents cleaned people's clothes for a living. They were dry cleaners. Every day my dad would go to work and clean dirty clothes. But I always know he lived with passion and joy, because he knew that by that work and that sacrifice that his son or his children would have a better life. So they had this dry cleaners, and eventually they got to the point where they were very successful. They had the best dry cleaners, the biggest dry cleaners in the city that we lived in. They eventually used some of the wealth that they had to build apartments and to rent those apartments out. And so they really literally came from nothing at all to being one of the families in my town that I grew up in, as being one of the most established families. And they helped other immigrants and other folks to come to the town and into the States. And so eventually I made it to UC Berkeley, and I graduated, and during that time, I learned that I was the only one in my whole dorm whose parents didn't go to college. My roommate in my college dorm, his father was a lawyer. The people across from in my dorm, parents were lawyers and professors and doctors. I was the only one, when I looked around, whose parents had work that did not require an education. And so it became very clear to me that something was wrong in American education, and the access to education was really broken. And as I spent the last several days here and talking to teachers and talking to the community, I too know that the equity and access to education for students in Brazil is also far from equal. And so I wanted to share with you some data and some facts about what's happening in America, and you guys can think about whether or not it resonates with you. So in America, if you have your degree, you make about twice as amount of the income. It goes from $22,000 for a student who doesn't earn or who just gets their high school degree or their high school diploma versus a student who gets their bachelor's degree. You are 4 times more likely to be unemployed if you do not earn your bachelor's degree. And you are 4 times more likely to live in poverty if you do not earn your bachelor's degree. Shake your head if that sounds similar to what's happening here in Brazil. So in America, the access to this education, this access to better quality of life is pretty broken, where if you're a high-income student, then about 80% of you are going to enroll in college when you're done with high school. If you're a low-income student, only 40% of those students are able to enroll in college, which is bad, which is not obviously a big gap, but the gap actually gets worse. The gap becomes huge because of those students who make it who are low income, only 11% of them, once they get to the university, dun, da, da, da. Okay, let me see how I can catch up now. Does the clicker work?
Point to the screen here.
I'm doomed. Doomed. Oh, there we go. There's my dad and my son that I was talking about. That's José Antônio de Sousa. And my son, Joseph Anthony. But I'm not going to go through that anymore. And that's a tiny little island. If you'd like to see it sometime, search on Google San Miguel Azores. You'll find this island as a dot in the middle of the Atlantic. When my parents left, there was less than 10,000 people living on this island. There I am as a little boy, seeing my father's sacrifice and everything he did for our family. There I am with the cleaners, digging in the backyard. And there's the proud day where I finally earned my degree, which I'm going to kind of go through. And here I am now as an actual real high school principal, having led 2 of the most successful high schools in the Bay Area. But I stay very humbled because my daughter, Rosa, makes sure that I don't get an inflated ego. There she is, saying, "Don't think you're too awesome, Dad." So here's some of the facts I was sharing with you in terms of what's happening in America with income, access, and access to work. Here's what I was sharing about whether or not you're likely to go to college. And then this is the last thing I shared, which is only 11% of students who make it to college who are first-generation low-income students actually graduate, which is heartbreaking to me to think that those students had to go through so much just to get to college, that they had to fight the odds so much, and then they still are finding such great obstacles to their graduation. And so I've committed my life, I've committed my work to making sure that every young person that comes into the doors of my schools that I lead, that they believe that they can go to college and they can succeed when they get there. And so our goal is to have 100% of our students earn a college degree. And also, secondly, to make sure that we're serving as a model for other schools, which is why I'm here today. A few months ago, we had a bunch of Brazilians come to my school, and it was wonderful, and I was able to talk to them about what we're doing and how the kind of culture we create and the technology we have. And I always joke when we have visitors from far away. I always say, if you ever need me, just give me a call, I'll be there. And in my 9 years of being a principal, I always thought it was just a joke, and then it actually became true. Here I am in Brazil talking about my work. So I want to tell you about who we serve. So Hayward is a small city just south of Oakland, California. Our school is a public school. You do not need to pay to come to our school. We actually have a process where we give preference to students who have struggles. So we give preference for students who are homeless, preference for students who are foster youth, preference for students who scored below average or very below the level in reading or writing or math before they got to us. We give preference for students who live in the low-income neighborhoods of our city. And we have a great mixture of students. We don't have almost any white students at our school. There's just not a lot of white students living in our city. But we have many Latino students and Asian students and a few African-American students. Most of our students are getting free lunch, which in America, if you hear us talk about free reduced lunch is the way that we talk about whether or not our students are low income, because if you're low income, you get free lunch. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we teach at our school. Obviously, everything we do is about college. Everything we do is about preparing our students to go to college. I'm going to use my slides in English to make sure I don't mess anything up. So all students in our school get one-to-one technology. Everyone gets a laptop. They get to use their laptop. We use Chromebooks. The reason why we have that is because we want our students to learn independently and learn collaboratively, and I'm going to tell you more about that later. But one of the most important parts of our school and the way we run our school is to look at data consistently. We believe that the job of teacher is not to teach students the way I'm doing to you, but instead the job of a teacher is to make sure that you are learning. Our students should be learning. If they're not learning, you're not teaching. And so we use data and we use assessment in a consistent way to make sure that all of our students are learning every day. We also have several intervention programs for students, all the way from if they don't know how to read yet, if they don't know how to do basic math, if they need social emotional supports, we have a lot of targeted supports for that. And then we have a lot of training for teachers. I believe deeply that the most important job in the world is teaching. I also believe it's one of the most complicated jobs in the world. It's far more complicated than neuroscience, than being a brain surgeon. When you teach, you look at every single person in the room and you have to figure out what all of them need. And you have to figure out how to create something that serves every student, serve their academic needs, serve their social needs. It's complex, and so we need to do everything we can to support our teachers in becoming great and becoming champions for our children. But I changed my presentation when I got here because after I started talking to people, it seemed pretty pervasive that one of the challenges in many Brazilian schools is an issue of culture. And when I say culture, I mean, does every single young person, does every single adult, does every person in the community believe that every child deserves to be treated as if they are a scholar? To be treated as if they can someday be a principal, someday be a doctor, someday be a lawyer? Do we believe that every child can do that? And have we created systems so that those things can come true? And I think that when people came to my school, the Brazilians a few months ago, and also other visitors, the first thing that everyone notices about our school is that our students are very engaged. That there's a sense of family at our school. There's a sense of belief and community at our school. There's an urgency of time that all of our students use their time well and teachers use their time well. And so I'm going to talk more about culture than some of the other things because I think there's a lot of amazing things being done in all the schools that are presenting today. There's amazing innovations, amazing technology, amazing work have been done around assessments and curricular frameworks. But I believe deeply, deeply, deeply that none of that stuff can work unless you make sure that everyone in the building believes that every child is beautiful, amazing, powerful, can do anything. Because you can have the sexiest technology, the most innovative practices, but if you have a teacher that doesn't believe that every child is great, then the same students will struggle and the same students will fail. So the seed of all greatness, the seed of all great schools is having unyielding high expectations for children and looking at the students just as if they were your own children. And it was such a blessing for me that in my first year of being a principal, that my daughter was born in the middle of the year, my first daughter, my first child. And when I looked at my students from then on out, I saw my own daughter and I saw what I wanted for her. And so what I want us to do right now is to think quietly, if you've already had children, or if you think you're going to have children, what do you want for them? What are your dreams for them? What are your hopes for them? What do you want their education to be like? I want you to think about that silently for about 15 seconds. And then I'm going to have you turn to the person next to you and share what you want for your child. Make eye contact with the person you're going to talk to. Find the person you're going to talk to. Not me. You're not going to talk to me. I know I'm handsome, but you have to talk to someone next to you. Ready, set, go. Five more seconds. 5, 4, 3. If I can get your eyes back up here in 3. Everyone's looking at me by 2. We're silent by 1. And I have everyone's eyes now who is actually listening to the presentation. Thank you for looking at me. Thank you so much for speaking to each other. Just so you guys know, on a weekly basis, I gather all of my students in the entire school and I put them in a room and I speak to them about our goals and our dreams. Every week, I wait for them to be silent enough that I can hear the light bulbs in the room. So speaking here today is a totally different feeling since you guys are all wearing headphones and it's dark in here and I can't actually see your eyeballs and probably can't expect all you guys to be pin drop silent, but I'm wrapping my mind around it. I do want to hear from some of you, and you can speak in Portuguese. What do you want for your children? I'll take my headphones off. You speak in Portuguese, and I'll repeat what you said in English, okay? So I want to hear 3 people. 3 people, what do you want for your child? What do you want for your children in their lives and in their education? Raise your hand. Be brave. Don't be scared. Yes. She said that she wants her children to have integrity and to have values. Senor. He wants that for children, especially his children, for there to be public schools that are effective and quality, and this should happen. This needs to happen. Yeah. Happiness. She wants her children to be happy. Raise your hand if you wanted your children or want your children to go to college or to go to the university. Raise your hand, please. It looks like almost everyone. Something that I believe deeply is that at some point a student might choose to not go to college. At some point they may make the choice that they don't want to go to college. It's possible. However, in America, and I imagine here in Brazil, that the students that we treat as if they're not going to college are not going to go to college, for sure. But if we look at the students in our room the way that you all were thinking about your children, they will do great things if we believe that they can. And so at our school, we have some specific things we do to make sure that we have a strong culture. One of them is a really simple thing, but it comes from the heart. And every week, my vice principal, Omar Wandera, shares an email or goes to every classroom in the school and shares whether or not the students earned to have free dress on Friday. So I'm going to read you an email that he sent to them. Royals, that's our mascot, the Royal. We are respectful, responsible, committed leaders and scholars that are bound for success. Our collective responsibility is to change our lives, the lives of the people around us, and make our mark on society. We will alter the popular thinking of who we are as minorities, teens, low-income students, dreamers, immigrants, and prove to all those that don't believe in us that our power is greater than theirs. Discrimination won't stop us. Hate won't stop us. The media won't stop us. History won't stop us. We are stronger than the ills of society, and we are mightier than the poor decisions of others. Our light shines through in darkness. We cannot, will not, and shall not be distracted from our destiny. Tomorrow you have earned the opportunity to express to all those that will listen that while you may look like the average teenager in your free dress and stature, you are not. You are extraordinary, intelligent, impactful change makers that will shake the world. We are royals. I read that because I think it's a really amazing piece of writing, but the reality is Mr. Wandera and I speak like that to our kids all the time. We speak to them like they're destined for greatness, and we speak of greatness to them all the time because we believe that they are just like my child, that they are deserved to have an education and to be treated as if they're destined for greatness. And so even in an email that's about whether or not they get to wear their jeans on Friday, we're going to talk to them that way. And it was very easy for me to find that email yesterday. It took me about 3 minutes. I just searched emails to kids from Omar Wandera, and I found that. So this is the normal way that we speak with our students and routines that we build in so we can have conversations like that every week, conversations we have like that in the classroom. And so there's this level of just belief, and then how it manifests is also in just basic routines. So in our school, every day, I or my vice principal are at the front gate. For students to come into school, they need to shake my hand. I will make sure they're in dress code while we're doing this, but they'll shake my hand and I'll tell them, why are you here? And every day they say the same thing for 4 years. They say they're here to learn. And I ask them, what will it take? And they say respect, responsibility, and commitment. Every day for 4 years, a firm handshake, a look in the eye, a belief and a commitment to each other that we were destined for greatness and that we will act that way. Teachers will also be at every single door. They won't do the mantra because that will obviously take a long time, but they look at their students every day as they walk into their classroom, walking them into the classroom. In every single classroom or school, the expectation is that students will walk in silently and there'll be work for them, ready for them when they walk in the door. It'll be presented on the screen or there'll be paper when they walk in. Every classroom, students learn that they need to walk in silently. We also have immense social services for the students who are struggling continually through their academics or through their emotional needs, that we have counseling for them to make sure that everyone can go to college. But if you asked our students, and I wish I would have some interviews for them, but if you ask our students, how does it all start? It starts because we take every single student before we even start school, the week before school starts, all the new students, we take them to the university. As a whole group, we go all to the university for 3 days. And from the very beginning, we show them that we are going to expect them to be magnificent, to be powerful. And the most powerful event we do at this day is actually really silly. But what we do is we make them walk into a lecture hall on the university in complete silence. And we do it over and over and over again until it's perfectly silent. Some of the kids, when they first see this, they think this is crazy. Why are they doing this? Why are they making all the kids walk in silent? Like, this seems like so militaristic. Why? And we ask them when they keep on messing up, do you guys want to keep doing it? Are we okay with about 90% good? And we ask the kids to tell us, and they say, no, Mr. De Sousa, if we don't expect ourselves to be great right now, then how are we going to expect ourselves to be great for 4 years to go to college? And then we ask them, do you want to do it again? Almost all the kids, yes. Okay. Well, all of you who said no, who don't want to do it again, go over there. And they all go to that side. And then all the rest of the kids leave. While those 10 kids over there who decided they didn't want to do it again, they watch everyone, they're like, oh, okay, I better go too. And they all go with them. And so from the very beginning, this positive culture becomes infectious. It becomes contagious. That students see greatness and they want to be great too. And so we use these positive systems that are very intense. We have kids crying during that week. I asked this girl, Serene Diaz, Serene, why do you think our school is different? Those are the first few days, the first day of the retreat. I said, Serene, why do you think it's different? And she said, Mr. De Sousa, this is the first time that we've been to a school where you guys actually believe that we can be respectful. It's the first time I've been at a school where people think that I can be great, I can be something. And she was crying while she was saying this. Students want people to love them and care for them and believe in them. And you can build structures in your school that make that happen. And so I want to share one more example of something that we do, which is very basic and you can learn about it. Hope maybe some of you already know about it, is the way that we do classroom culture and we redirect behavior in our school, which is very common in many schools. It's common in high-performing schools. I'm going to say that. That when we give expectations to a student, we make sure that they're very clear, that they're posted, they're visual. We actually check to see if they understand the expectations before we start. Once we start the expectations, the teacher will walk around the room and will celebrate the students who are meeting expectation. Thank you, Clara, for sitting silently and getting straight to work. Thank you, Jonathan, for helping your partner out. Thank you, Beto, for getting out your notes from yesterday. We do all the positive narration first. We celebrate the things that are going right, instead of what happens in most classes, which is that the teacher says what to do and then goes to find all the students who are not doing the right thing and then puts that in the space, and that becomes the normal. The negative behavior becomes more normal than the positive behavior. And then you put it out into space, and then that becomes truth. And so we use positive narration and consistent and kind redirection for student behavior instead of this idea of creating a classroom where the teacher is just whacking kids when they don't do what they're supposed to do. Maybe not physically whacking them, but emotionally whacking them. So those are just some simple things that we do in culture, and I want to spend the next 5 minutes talking to you about what's possible when you create a culture that works. What's possible? What's possible is almost all your students can go to college. 99% of my students, even though they're first generation, even though they're mostly low-income students, enroll in college after graduation. I'm talking about kids who just 4 years before, when they were in middle school, never believed they would go to college, are enrolling in college. In our freshman year, we often have 2.5 years of growth for students who are behind grade level when they arrive. And just so you know, we have about 50% of our students are about 5 years behind grade level when they arrive. And we were named as one of the top 2% of all high schools in America compared to any high school, including high schools in the highest income areas of our country. So it's possible that students can learn at high levels even when they come from places where academics and scholarship are not common. A lot of work has to happen with teachers. I'm not going to spend too much time because I only have 4 minutes, but you have to have work with teachers to make this possible. You have to be working closely with them. You have to be thinking about how to get them involved and for them to believe in themselves. But I want to move. This is our results in terms of the work we've done to be a model in the Bay Area and hopefully the world around what it looks like to have a great school. I encourage you to look up these reports if you'd like to. We had the country's #1 innovative teacher named this year in blended learning. And we were asked to be part of the first year of the Harvard Teaching Fellows, which is a new teaching program in our country. So what's possible? What's possible when this bottom row of your teaching and your culture is right? What happens in a school when you can make sure that students believe that they can succeed, when they have an academic mindset? What happens when you create a school that teaches students how to be students when they didn't know how to be students? What happens when it's really clear what it looks like to master your skills and content? If you have this bottom layer down, if every kid knows that they're there to learn, if every teacher knows it's their job to teach kids how to learn, to be students, to treat students with love and care and with potential, that if you get that bottom row, what we've seen is our students are able to work independently and collaboratively at very high levels, which is exciting because you need to be able to work independently and collaboratively to succeed in the university. Some of the worst teaching, I'm sorry if you're a professor in university, some of the worst teaching in America is in the colleges. It's didactic. It's one person talking at someone for an hour and a half. It's the worst teaching. You have to be able to learn independently. You have to be able to lead class and learn from each other. So this work of helping students become independent is both a means and an end. I want our students to become independent learners. I want our students to be collaborative learners. I want our students to be able to speak effectively and communicate effectively. But I want it not only because it's important, but I want it because it allows the teachers to do different things and be innovative with how they use time in their school. So examples of this, we have been able to now, that our students have learned to be independent learners, we can have students go to a space and work independently with minimal to little teacher supervision so that the teachers can then go work with students more one-on-one. So the amount of time of the teacher is talking to the entire group is minimal. It's like 15% at my school. The majority of time that our teachers are working with students is in one-on-one interactions or in small group instruction. Because students can spend a majority of their time working in groups and independently, and they can do it effectively. That I could walk in and be proud of what they're doing, even though no one's telling them exactly what to do. And let me be clear. These are the same students that in their middle schools, before they arrived to us, were throwing paper balls across the room, who were sitting in the back of the room doing nothing. That when they got to us, they learned to be driven, they learned to be great because we told them that they were great and we expected them to be great and we did something about it when they weren't being great. So when you create a school culture, students can learn to be independent, can learn to be collaborative, and you can free your teachers up to do things that they need to do. That being said, it is still important for a teacher to be in front of the whole class or for there to be times where you're setting culture and community together where we work with our teachers to see how do you set the hook? How do you make kids excited about what they're going to learn? Often that happens in a whole group where you show an interesting problem, or you show an interesting video, you show something that says, what we're learning today matters to the world, it matters to you, and we do that in whole group. But more often than not, when we're in whole group, it shouldn't be about trying to make sure every single person learns, because that happens so much better in a one-on-one conversation when you can read their emotions and their understanding through a dialogue. So I can talk a lot about how we use technology in our school. Given that I have 50 seconds, I'm not going to go through hard, but I want you guys to think in your schools, in the places that you're leading, how are you creating this foundation? How are you creating a foundation that allows for your students to move up this pyramid? How are you training your teachers to make sure that they're fantastic at getting kids to believe that they can be great, that they can learn, no matter where they come from? What are your teachers doing in your schools to make sure that you teach kids how to be students? How do you sit? How do you talk? How do you write your notes? How do you just act like a student? Because unfortunately, so many of students in America come to us not even knowing how to act like students because they are in such dysfunctional schools. So in a high school, this is rare because most high school teachers like to teach their subject first, and then they teach the students second. So we've created a culture where, no, you teach students first, and you teach your subject second. In fact, you teach students how to learn your subject before you actually teach your subject. If that makes sense. It's more important that we teach kids how to learn than it is to teach the content. So this is obviously on the slide. I hope you guys can use it. I can talk to you guys more about what each of these blocks look like and how we make this turn out in our school. I'm really proud of the work that we do at my school, but I'm also really angry. And there's a quote that I'm going to share at ending. It's from St. Augustine. St. Augustine shared that hope has two daughters, anger and courage. Anger that things are the way they are, and courage to make them change. What I was saying, what I was afraid of, or what I'm angry with in that session is that millions of students are going to school every day, billions of students are going to school every day, going to schools that don't honor their dignity and their potential. And if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna improve our countries and we're gonna close the achievement gap, if we're gonna close the economic gap, then we have to believe that kids can be great. And then we have to build schools that honor that greatness. So thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here in Brazil, and you guys are so warm and kind. Thank you.